Hello everyone, Cranny here, and today I'm going to be reviewing my Lenovo ThinkPad P52 and discussing both what I like about it and what little I don't like about it. The ThinkPad P52 was released in June of 2018 and had 6-core 8th gen CPUs. Unlike most mobile workstations with 8th gen, a 4-core option was not offered. It offered the Quadro P1000, P2000, and P3200 GPUs. It could have up to 128 gigabytes of 2400 MHz DDR4 RAM, though only 64 gigabytes if ECC, and it offered 15.6-inch 1920 by 1080 and 3840 by 2160 displays, with a 4K option available as a touchscreen. The P52 was the successor to the P51, offering many improvements such as better GPUs, better 6-core CPUs, better displays, both for 1080p and 2160p. Specs-wise, it seems like a very good computer. The i7-8850H is the CPU in my P52, and was the mid-range CPU. Looking at listings on eBay, it appears that the i7-8850H is the most common CPU in the P52. Anyway, the i7-8850H gets an average score on Passmark of 10,316. However, the score is skewed down by laptops which don't have great cooling and people running their laptops on battery. Doing the test on my P52, I normally get a score of around 12,000, but on this one I got a score of 11,971. I've gotten up to a score of 12,300 something before. In general, if you're looking to buy a P52, I wouldn't suggest worrying much about the CPU. The best CPU, the Xeon E2176M, is only about 10% faster in both average and median passmark scores than the worst CPU, the i7-8750H. Though again, those are just averages, and the difference is likely a bit larger with the P52 specifically. I just don't have any way to confirm that. My P52 is the Quadro P2000, which got a score of 5,886 in the passmark test. It can run older or simpler games fairly well, and it works great for things like 3D modeling, better than the 1050 Ti on my desktop even. It also has 4 gigabytes of VRAM. The GPU, unlike the CPU, is something I would recommend actually caring about when buying one of these. The P2000 is significantly better than the P1000 on average, as is the P3200 compared to the P2000. Again, I only have data on my P52, but I can at least say that there are significant improvements on the different GPUs. I would suggest getting at least the P2000, but depending on the work you do, the P1000 might be good enough. Of course, the P3200 would be preferable, but that'll definitely cost more to get and may not be necessary. I should also note that the P1000 is a 40-watt TDP card, the P2000 is 50-watt, and the P3200 is 78-watt. Though in cases where you are actually using the DGPU, you will most likely be on AC, and the difference in power consumption won't matter much. The display in mine is the 4K touchscreen, and it's a pretty great display. It's an AUO B156ZN03.2. It's rated at 100% Adobe, 400 nits, and has a contrast ratio of 1200 to 1. When I'm inside, it's bright enough that I never have to run it at full brightness. This makes it great for any sort of color-accurate work, though I don't do that sort of thing much myself. I will say, it's not particularly great for gaming, given that it's only 60 Hz, has a 30 millisecond response time, and a bit of motion blur. Oh, and it's 4K. But it's not a machine meant for gaming, so naturally it won't be great for it. Now, I've only had this laptop for about 3 months now, so I can't entirely say how long it should last, but it's at least lasted 5 years of use by the previous owner or owners. Rigidity-wise, this laptop is insanely rigid, and the most rigid laptop I've ever owned. It's very well built in general, and I've taken it apart a few times. It uses a full magnesium body around the motherboard, which keeps it protected and is responsible for the rigidity. I don't think it's the most durable laptop I own. I think that would be my ThinkPad W510, but it's a pretty durable laptop. The main weak point is the lid, though it's still much better than most new laptops in that respect. I think it's probably my favorite looking laptop I've owned as well. I love just the body style of it, the classic hinges, the glass display. I used to prefer the non-touch models with the plastic bezels, but the glass has grown on me a lot and I now prefer it. It's not actually glass, of course, it's plexiglass or something similar. Now I will say that the keyboard did break once from me wiping it down with a cloth just because of how thin the keycaps were. This is an issue with the backlit keyboards that would have come on it, though you can get a non-backlit keyboard which would have only come on the lower end machines like the E580, L580, T590, etc. I can recommend getting a chickeny keyboard if you do have to replace it, as both the backlit and non-backlit ones were the best. Battery life isn't the best, but it's not particularly bad either. Just using the battery saver settings in Windows 10 on mine, I can get 6 hours or even 7 hours doing basic tasks like web browsing, and maybe 5 hours of video on YouTube with medium to low brightness. For some people this would be an issue, but it doesn't affect me much. If you really need to, you can swap the battery even, though I don't have an extra one. Each battery is 90 watt hours. The size and weight aren't great, but like the battery life, it doesn't affect me much. I've always used and preferred 15-inch laptops, and the P52 is only 1.2 inches thick at the back and 1 inch at the front, which I don't find to be too bad at all. Lenovo says the P52 with the touchscreen starts at 6.4 pounds, however mine weighs 6.2 pounds. My friend's P50 with a touchscreen is a good bit heavier, so it may be that the P52 in general is just lighter. Still, the weight again doesn't bother me at all. Overall, I really like this laptop. The P5X is probably my favorite laptop design of all time, and the P52 gets significantly better CPUs and GPUs than the earlier P50 and P51, while not having nearly as much of a cooling issue as the P53. Actually, the P52 is basically the oldest laptop you can get with a 6-core CPU. The P52 is also the last to have the removable battery. The P53 has an internal one instead. They aren't great price performance, not as good as a P50, but if you really need a good GPU and display, they aren't awful. Mine has the i7-8850H P2000 4K touchscreen, 32GB of RAM, and a 1TB SSD, and I got it for $450 USD. I saw a T14 Gen 2 the other day for sale with an 8-core Ryzen 7 Pro 5850U, which is a good bit better than the i7-8850H in my P52. It was also $450 like my P52. For a lot of cases, I think it'd be a better price to performance for the CPU alone, as well as a better laptop for most people considering the better portability and battery life it'd get. However, the GPU is significantly worse, the display is worse, and it would come with less RAM and storage. Not to mention that the T14 Gen 2 AMD isn't that well built or upgradable either. I think that this is a great laptop personally, but I can't recommend buying one unless you want to use it as a daily driver. If you just want one because it's a cool laptop, a P50 would be a better choice, given that they are similar and the P50 is both a better price to performance and cheaper in general. Other than that, I think this is a great laptop with good performance, good displays, good build quality, good upgradability, and great looks in my opinion. I'm Cranny, and thanks for watching.